Letter 5. On the love of one's neighbor. To Sister de la Sainte, on the love of one's neighbor. Nancy, 1735. I am not at all surprised at the friendship you have for your dear relative, and understand that it is due to her for many reasons. However, because by your own showing this affection disturbs you, and prevents you giving your whole heart to God, there must needs be some irregularity about it. If you wish to sanctify it, and to render it altogether supernatural, this is what God demands of you. First, that you will not allow yourself to think about this person too often, nor to be engrossed by thoughts of her. There is moderation in all things. Second, that in the illnesses and afflictions she has to endure, you will submit to them as a sacrifice you must make to God, and abandon yourself to Him, so that He may dispose of her and of you in all things and about all things, according to His most holy will and loving good pleasure. You must know that abandoning her thus to the will and care of Divine Providence, you render her, as well as yourself, the greatest possible service, since by this sacrifice you place her in the hands of God, who is infinitely good and infinitely powerful. We must certainly make use of our reasoning faculties in our trials, but, as a very holy and learned Christian has well said, we must not depend too much on this feeble faculty, which is stronger in opposition to what is good than in overcoming evil. It is religion and the grace we obtain through humble prayer which can sustain us. Sadness, depression, interior rebellion when our relatives suffer from various causes, taking rise in a too affectionate disposition, will be a grand occasion of virtue and merit to us, if, endeavoring to raise ourselves by faith above our natural feelings, we understand that all has to be sacrificed to the adorable and most holy will of God. Do we not know that nothing can happen in this world without His permission, and that He has arranged everything for the greater good of those who submit to Him, or at least who desire to acquire and to practice this submission? If we could only understand the value of this virtue! Of all the means of salvation, this is, together with the fulfillment of the divine precepts, the most universal and the most infallible. Nothing more is required to sanctify most people and to lighten for them the trials of life. A wise pagan thought in this way when he said, "If one has a sensitive nature, and is accustomed to foster in oneself what the world calls refined and generous sentiments, it is no easy matter to cure oneself of thinking too much about the family honor, and of taking too great an interest in family affairs, and also of being too much moved by every incident affecting those to whom we are most tenderly attached. It is necessary to pray much about this, and also to reflect how to combat it. Firstly, to reflect on the uselessness of our worries and our feelings, and on the harm they do ourselves, as much to the bodily health as to the welfare of the soul. Secondly, to combat it by refraining from frequent, lengthy, and earnest thoughts on the subject, and by sacrificing and abandoning it entirely to God, in spite of the pangs the heart must endure from the violence of such sacrifices. Consider that, after all, there is only one thing necessary, and that, provided that this great affair succeeds, everything else must be as God pleases. These feelings are quickly overcome, or rather, they are so trifling and paltry that they pass like shadows and return no more. Let us act like worldly people when they have to attend to business of the utmost importance on which depend their honor, their life, their property, in fact everything, as they think. They have nothing else in their minds day and night but this important business, and neglect everything else as being nothing in comparison. As Jesus Christ has said, we must learn from the children of this world, who are wiser in their generation than the children of light. Remember that what can help to save us is not exterior solitude, nor retirement, for these can be had even in the world, but an interior withdrawal and solitude of the mind and heart, of the mind, by banishing superfluous cares and thoughts, and by endeavoring to make God the absorbing occupation of the heart, by lamenting its defects, by humbling it and frequently sighing after God, and by detaching it gradually from the creature to attach it solely to the Creator. He is the supreme truth, and nothing has any reality apart from Him. Consequently, purely temporal interests, the business, the honors, pleasures, or sufferings of this lower world, are not but shadows and phantoms. They appear to exist, but in reality are nothing. Letter 6. On Attachments. To Sister Anne Marguerite Boudet de la Bellière. On attachment too keenly felt. My very dear daughter in Jesus Christ, I cannot thank God enough for this great desire of giving yourself to Him without reserve that He has bestowed on you with the courage which inspires you to make so many little sacrifices, and to moderate even the most harmless attachments. Oh, my dear sister, how thoroughly God has enlightened you about this, and how many dangers you will escape if you are faithful in following this light. We, unhappily, find only too many who, making profession of piety, are caught in this snare, and thus prevented from making any progress. With the excuse that there is no sin in the attachments they allow themselves, they give themselves up to them without scruple, and thus place an impenetrable barrier to the grace and the communications of God. He desires to fill and inflame their hearts with His pure love, but how can He do so as long as those hearts are distracted by foolish amusements, and filled with a miserable love for some creature? You know what a dangerous snare this was for Saint Teresa, and in truth, after such an example, you cannot be too much on your guard. Go on, then, detaching yourself more and more, and I assure you that in proportion as your detachment becomes more complete, you will feel more drawn to God, to prayer, recollection, and the practice of every virtue. For, when the heart is empty in this way, God fills it, and then one can do everything easily and pleasantly, because all is done out of love, and that, you know, makes all things easy and sweetens all bitterness. Letter 7. Personal Attachments. My dear sister, allow me to tell you in all sincerity a fear that makes me anxious about you. It seems to me that your too frequent intercourse with the members of your numerous family, and with other people from the outside, raises a serious obstacle to your advancement. Take care that while trying to do good to others, you do no harm to yourself. Although I am obliged by my vocation to have more communication with the world than you, I assure you nevertheless that I find it very good for my soul to keep these communications within bounds. Since I came here, I have only made necessary visits, and try as much as possible to avoid receiving them. To those who come to me, I speak only of God, of salvation, or of eternity. This is the rule laid down by St. Ignatius, and one which he declared suited him well. If people like this kind of conversation, they will profit by it, and their visit will not have been a waste of time. If they do not care for it, they will not come again, or at any rate not so often, and then I shall have more time left me for my priestly duties. It is useless to expect to make any progress as long as your mind is filled with news from the outside, and your heart preoccupied with temporal affairs. The first condition for the interior life is recollection. I cannot urge you too strongly to restrict your communications, and to follow the plan of St. Ignatius about those that you think you ought to retain. This plan is better suited to a religious who is obliged by her vocation to keep secluded than to other people. Far from being surprised, people in the world cannot but be edified at the fidelity with which she conforms her conduct to her vocation. On the contrary, if by these useless communications with people in the world she frequented society too much, she would only scandalize them, and would also lose all those graces which she might have acquired by her communications with God.